I worked out, I think I probably had about 600-700 fights. You probably had
scary.
more.
I did the math, and it is well over 1,000. I was fighting from the age of 7.
You are a genetic freak as well.
Because I was new to the World Championships, it was my first one. I didn't know anybody, but there were 2 people that I was concerned about. I was watching, I was like, he is actually very good.
Flipping on the edge of my seat all the way through
my life, it did change. It could have gone in one direction or the other, down to the last second.
Do you think that was a sliding doors moment then?
100%. There's a huge difference between fighting to win to fighting not to lose.
On this episode of the Elite Podcast, I speak to Drew Neal, 3 times WAKO World Champion and personal trainer to Bollywood superstars.
Drew, how we doing?
I'm good.
Good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, it's been ages.
It really
literally
has,
years.
When was the last time we actually met up?
So I was trying to work this out. I reckon it must be 2 years, because you had your birthday, which I didn't come to because last time I was here, you remember?
Yeah,
was that last year?
Which one was that?
You were out in Liverpool and I was going to come and join you.
Oh,
and I couldn't get
it was
here.
probably a couple of years ago.
So I missed you then, and then it was the time before that. So it's probably 3 years. You know?
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It's horrendous considering we lived in each other's pockets for so long.
I know, mate. Absolutely. I mean, so 3 years and I've been seeing you sporadically since then. But for anyone that's listening that doesn't know, obviously we did everything together, didn't we? For how many, 12, 15 years?
Like a whole fighting career.
Yeah, literally from early 20s for yourself all the way through to when you retired.
Probably about 2004.
Yeah.
To, when did I retire? 2021, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I remember being at the Paris Worlds.
2003, that was.
Was that 2003, not 21? I thought that was 21 for some reason.
No.
Is that not?
No, I was 23.
So you were 21, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you were only 21?
No, I was 23 when I won.
Oh, you were 23?
Yeah.
Yeah, got you, that's right. Yeah, so it's from about then, wasn't it? So we did all sorts of stuff together. Loads of adventures, loads of through all the highs and all the lows as well.
Absolutely.
You didn't really have that many lows, to be honest with you. You had a lot of highs.
Maybe from the outside. I don't know about from the inside.
I know, yeah. But we did. We also had a lot of real conversations, didn't we? You know?
Yeah. I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, but I can remember being in the car with you going towards the airport when we're going to a trip to Austria or whatever, and just having so many conversations. Like really deep, crazy conversations, but we were really on a good level.
Yeah.
And those conversations, I miss them so much. So to see you now, it's just great because it's like picking up where we left off.
Absolutely, mate. We'll get to have one of those conversations today, hopefully, with
sure.
everyone listening. But it was good. We speak realistically as well. Obviously, anything that we spoke to, we were dead honest with each other, weren't we? Because whenever you fight, obviously everyone's experiencing the same emotions, aren't they?
Yeah.
But you regulate them, you control them. You don't show anyone, do you?
Everyone's different with how they deal with it. And actually, you and I were very different with how we dealt with, I feel, with how we dealt with those emotions. You would tend to talk them out a little bit more, and I would internalize them a little bit more. So, which actually worked because you love to talk. I didn't. So then, it might be terrible for this podcast, but then you would get all your emotions out and I'd listen to them and I'd internalize mine and deal with those in my own way. So we actually worked really well together.
Yeah. What do you mean you'd listen to me and go, actually, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you do my talking for me almost. It's like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I feel better about it now.
Yeah, because that's normal. But no one else would I speak to about that with.
No, absolutely exactly right.
I mean, I've spent years in the parachute regiment beforehand where you don't have emotions. You're literally doing scary stuff every day. And, you wouldn't say, I feel a bit nervous about that because they go, shut up, you pussy.
Yeah,
you don't
course.
get grip. So you don't, you do something terrifying. You go, you're nervous. And you go, no, of course I'm not. Are you?
I know.
Yeah. And you just disguise it when in fact, as I got older, I was able to then kind of be a bit more intelligent and honest with myself. And I can remember fighting once because a lot of the times you get used to your nerves. We literally probably... I worked out. I think I probably had about 600-700 fights. You probably had
scary.
more. You probably had over 1,000.
I've worked this before, and I did the math, and it is well over 1,000. I was fighting from the age of 7, and my mum and dad used to literally take me up and down the country every weekend, every Sunday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday. You know what tournaments are like. Sometimes you'll fight 3 times, 4 times. Maybe you do a double section. Yeah. You have so many fights. And I can remember, I put it on Instagram once, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was a ridiculous amount. And I had all this backlash of people saying,
lying.
There's no way you've had that many fights.
Yeah.
I have. I absolutely have. No, the professional fight, they have 50 fights and that's it. I said, but it's not that. It's a tournament. And when you fight in tournaments, you can literally have 8 fights a day and you always lose.
Yeah.
Or if you don't, you win.
That is a really good point, that what you just said then.
Imagine how much you've lost. If I said to somebody, I've probably lost 400 or 500 times, you must be really shit. But luckily, I've won a little bit more than I lost.
Yeah, yeah.
But you go to a tournament, you can either win or lose. And most people will lose at some point.
Any match sports that is, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because if you're doing a draw sheet and there's like 20 of you in there, you win, you go through to the next round. Half of you have lost straight away. Then the next fight, the other half have lost. Yeah. One person doesn't lose.
I know.
And if you fight in multiple sections and then you do team events and then you got the open weight, which is like all of the weights together and only one. So all the champions and all the winners of all the other divisions plus others fight in that and only one's winning from that. And that's not normally the same person apart from maybe Raymond Daniels before and then Elijah for when he was. But so everyone's losing all the time.
So like in our sport, you have to learn how to deal with loss really quickly because you're going to lose a lot. I can remember being as like a kid, I still don't deal with loss very well at all.
Oh, you hated it.
I'm so competitive. I know, we are.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I can remember like every single time I lost, and I say as a kid, this probably went on till I was about 15, 16. But I'd cry and I'd get really emotional. I'd get really upset. And I can remember my dad telling me, don't show that you cry. Typical, British, stiff upper lip, stop crying, stop doing that, get in the corner, don't let anyone see you cry. And I can remember one tournament, he drilled it into me. This was going on for years. And I lost to this guy. I think it was an FSK.
Yeah.
I was probably like 10 or 11, something like that. Maybe 21. No, it's 10 or 11. And I lost and I held it together. And I was so proud of myself. And I walked off the mat, touched gloves, came back. Dad was there.
How old was you back then?
About 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And I didn't cry. And I was holding it in, but I was okay. My dad looked at me. He went, why aren't you crying? And I went, I'm holding it in, Dad. He went, that means you don't care. I went, like tears everywhere. It was like, I couldn't win with my dad. But what he taught me was just so much discipline, integrity, being consistent, doing all the things that I was uncomfortable with, just doing them anyway, facing the fears and just doing it. Yeah. And my dad just gave me that right from the very early days.
So your dad was kind of like, I'm assuming, like Elijah's dad, he takes him everywhere. Was he like that?
Exactly like that. Yeah. I often see the relationship that Adrian and Elijah have, and it's like a mirror image.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, my mum was the same. It was my mum and my dad always taking me.
As his mum was as well.
Of course,
they were a team, weren't they?
So
obviously not both could go to everything.
No, so it was just a family thing. So in my juniors, they were always there taking me everywhere. My mum, there's a picture on Facebook and you'll see my mum. She always used to pull a chair up by the mat and she'd be like right in front of the mat when Alfie Lewis fighting anyone, all the big names. In anyone who was anyone, she was right by the mat like this at the edge. And she's in the background of all the pictures.
Is she?
All the time. It's so funny. But that was just the way they were. They'd literally take me out. My dad would look in Martial Arts Illustrated at the time, look at what tournaments were up on the weekend, and they could be...
He was your manager then, was he?
Yeah, absolutely, totally. So it could be in Scotland, it could be in Cornwall, it didn't matter.
So were you kind of independent? Because I know you went for quite a few really big, well-known clubs when you were younger, didn't you? Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and who you trained with? And then was you kind of independent, like a free... going from one to another, or was there any...
So it's really funny. So when I was a kid, I started training when I was 5.
Yeah.
I wanted to... My big brother did it. He was my hero. So if whatever he did, I wanted to copy. So when I was 4, I started asking... I can remember asking the questions. We were doing... Enter the Dragon Bruce Lee. Me and my brother always used to reenact this when I was a student. We just used to play all the time. So I was clearly interested. But my instructor, who I went to, John Kane in Kidderminster, he wouldn't take me on until I was 5. That was like the age that you started him at that point. So,
I couldn't have trained at 5, by the way. I was a spinner. I was like, I did a little bit like I was about 7 or 8, but I had to properly when I was about 12.
I can't imagine trying to control you at that age.
I just was. I must have been ADHD, obviously. Well,
total idiot in class.
Both my kids are anyway, so that would probably lead me to believe I were. But you were a lot more. I'd like to think I was focused. One of the focused kids in class that you get. I'm imagining then, weren't you?
I'd like to think so. I can't really. The only thing I can remember 5th birthday going in, and John Kane. He had this. Wasn't very common then, but it was a full-time dojo. So we got back in the day, 1985, bags, wooden floor, everything. So it was all set up. It looked brilliant. And I can remember walking in, and starting the class, and I didn't obviously have a suit. So my mum had given me some pajamas. So I got these red pajama bottoms on. And I walked in.
Any pictures?
No, thankfully. They burnt. But as I walked in, John Kane took me in. And I can kind of remember him teaching me a few things in the class. And then I could always remember him saying, Chris Penn, who was a very good fighter back in the juniors at that time. And John Kane said, go with Chris. Chris will show you how it's done. And that was my first.
How old is Chris?
He's a year older than me, so he would have been 6.
Yeah.
But he'd been doing it probably a year or maybe a few months before. But he kind of knew what he was doing. So I can just remember that first class quite vividly. And then obviously with John Kane, I was training with, we were doing karate, we were doing kickboxing.
So what was your original start was karate, was it?
Karate, yeah.
How far did you progress with your belts and stuff in that?
Karate, I got black belt.
Oh, wow. What style of karate was that?
Sankakai. Okay. But actually, strangely, I didn't do my black belt with John. I did it with another karate instructor, John Nelson, and his instructor, Calvin Collins and Butch and all. I mean, they had a big contingency. It was a big association. But Kidderminster, strangely, had some really, really good
It's mad,
schools.
isn't it?
It's such,
and there's so many good
town.
martial artists come from.
It's unbelievable. It's like a nuclear. But Telford's the same.
It is now, yeah. Telford now is unbelievable, the amount of martial arts quality. And it's mad. Just like from one small kind of working class, very similar places, really, aren't they?
They really, really are.
Old industrial kind of revolution era kind of towns. Little bit rough around the edges,
of course.
But some good people in there as well also. But they're tough, aren't they, in those places, aren't they? I think it's tough kind of growing up and living in those areas, and that's reflected, and there's some great martial artists, and you only need a couple in the area to
so
really...
I was really lucky when I was with John.
Because the Winspers are from there as well.
So I was training with Matt, James, Steve. They were students the same as me and Matt were like that when we were kids.
You trained together, didn't you?
We were together like up until...
In what schools was that? Did you train?
That was in John Kane's. Sankakai
when he did karate as well.
Yeah, same. So we were there. And I started going to tournaments, just like local tournaments really, around 7 or 8. And John was very... he'd send me out, but he wasn't so interested in doing the tournaments.
Yeah.
So my mum and dad used to take me. And then I can remember when I was about 10... My dad, again, looking through the Combat on Martial Arts Illustrated magazine, and there was the British Laugar Championships.
So Laugar back in the 80s and the 90s, though.
Obviously, my dad does his research. He was like, you should go to this.
But the tournament, was the Open Laugar tournament?
But it wasn't open. It was only for Laugar students. So I had a contact who trained with John. His name was Choco, Robert Denham. And he used to train with a guy, Vince Lewis. And Vince Lewis was Laugar.
Everyone knows Vince, yeah.
So Choco had asked Vince and said, look, I've got a guy who does karate, but he wants to come and train in wants to come and fight in the Laugar. Will you allow it? And Vince was like, no, he's got to train with me if he's coming to the Laugar. So I went to the tournament and watched it. I just went as this was my dad. He just took me and said, just watch and see what it is. It was amazing. And
were you impressed?
Yeah.
What was different?
I was impressed. It was because I'd done a lot of like smaller karate type interclub tournaments. Yeah. They were a little rigid, and the Laugar just seemed to be a little bit more expressive.
It is, yeah, definitely, isn't it? It's a soft style martial art. Kung Fu soft. Karate is hard.
I mean, I was blown away, not so much by my division, but in the adults, obviously, they were legends. I mean, Kevin Bruton was there. Robert Denham, the guy that I spoke about, he was there. Steve, there was a lot. So when I watched my division, I watched the 2 guys that won, and I was like, my dad was...
How old are you then? Sorry?
I was 10.
You were 10?
Yeah. And he was like, how do you think you'd do? And I was, I'd win. He said, all right, that's it. So the next week, went to Vince, started training with Vince Lewis, and he was really my second father. My mentor,
your
my coach,
main martial arts
he
coach
was my. I've taken a little bit from everybody, but if I was to thank one person in particular, it'd be him.
Yeah.
So from the age of 10 through to probably 17-ish, he was
your main influential.
He was my guy
as well, aren't they?
He taught me everything.
Yeah,
he really did. And I had some successes. I did all right as a junior, but that was when I was like 13, 14. Matt was like, he was killing it.
He was
I would go to some tournaments.
Yeah.
I was like, God, Matt's like, I think he like formed SKO, I think it was, wasn't it? When they started, or SMAF. That was their association with Del Sampson, wasn't it?
I can't remember. I think the SMAF was formed. I think that's a bit later though.
Was it?
Yeah, that's when he's a bit older, I think. I don't know, I might be wrong, but
But regardless, they were just smashing everything. And I was winning the tournaments that I did, and I actually fought Matt, because me and Matt, obviously, when I was in my early days, we used to fight all the time.
Yeah.
And it was always, we had great battles. I'd win one, he'd win one. It was always really close. And then he just went catapulted and started winning everything. And I was just like blown away by it. And I did my bit, and I did all right. But then like 17, 18, you know what it's like. You start going out. I was still training.
Testosterone's kicking in a lot then,
but I went to university and I stopped training. I carried on training, but I stopped competing for like probably 2, maybe 3 years. And then when I was about, I must have been 19, 20, after university and whatever, I can remember coming back and my friend was training with Jason Charlesworth. And my friend is from school. He was just a school friend.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of getting the bug again. And he was like, come and train with Jason Charlesworth. I'd literally train there. So I was like, okay, I'll come along.
How old are you that?
I was 20.
20 then, yeah.
So I went and I'd still got it. I was still okay. And he suggested maybe I should go and do some tournaments again. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it.
Quite easily talked back into that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at that point then I wanted another challenge. So I thought, yeah, why not? And I can remember going, it might not have been my first tournament, but it was second or third. It was really early doors. And I went to the tournament and booked in and everything. And Jason was like, all right, so the first person you've got is Corey Kane. And I knew the name as a kid because Corey was a bit older than me. And I think Corey had just come back from winning the Worlds.
Oh, is that when he put that mask on and everything?
Yeah, so I think he won the Worlds in 2001 maybe.
The Darth Maul mask or something.
So he was like a legend. He freaked everyone out. And
that was the time he's peaky.
So you hear these stories. And this was like my
David
first
Goggins,
fight.
isn't he? Like the British answer to David Goggins.
Well, he was a beast, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Very
absolutely super fit guy, super technical, intense.
Yeah.
Every fight was aggressive, and that was just the way he was, which was true for a lot of people back then, but he was the epitome of it. So when Jason told me, it didn't really impact me because I had nothing to lose. So, but Jason was nervous, and I could tell that he was nervous, and he was like, you got Corey Kane, and he was like, I could tell that he wasn't very happy about it, but I was like, it's okay, it's fine. So went in and won, which that's great. I was really happy, but everyone seemed like really surprised. I was like, but I'm used to winning. I'm used to losing. It's okay.
Yeah.
But because I hadn't been on the circuit for so many years, I think everyone was a bit, who the hell is this?
Yeah.
I can remember I was still wearing, do you remember those marble gloves that were like, not the macho gloves, there was some brand.
Similar to that,
but they were like
knuckles coming through.
Really old. They were all split. And everyone else had got like these new top 10 pads or whatever they were, but I hadn't got those. So anyway, Corey Kane. And then the next one I had was Billy Bryce. Can you imagine the run-up to this? Yeah. It's like, Corey Kane, I might win this now. Oh, no, you got Billy Bryce next.
Team, isn't it?
For God's sake.
Or the SWAT team as they became.
So Billy Bryce, again, being a kid, I can remember him and looked up to him. Used to love watching Billy fight.
Amazing. Billy Bryce.
Kicking ability.
Mr. Nice, Billy Bryce.
Yeah, but just so skillful.
Yeah.
And
those spin kicks from anywhere and all the angles.
Big, long shoulder, big, long legs, arms dangling everywhere. So he was... like, again, not nervous at all, strangely.
Nothing to lose, have you?
No, nothing at all.
Yeah.
So when
that's dangerous, that is, though. When you're fighting someone like that who's an underdog and he's got no expectations, and you're also really calm anyway. I've seen you a lot of times, you are Mr. Composure. Even whether things are good or bad, you don't literally switch. You're still in, you're in the middle.
But that's me being internal again. Inside, it's turmoil.
Yeah.
It's everything's going on. It's a total mess.
Yeah.
But actually, at this point, it probably wasn't. So, anyway, fought Billy. Beat Billy.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I didn't think anything of it. Jason and people were like, I could sense there was a bit of noise happening. Next round was Jay Morrison, of all people.
Oh, bloody hell, Jay.
I know. So again, at that point, I didn't know Jay. He wasn't a name that I was familiar with. So it was a relatively comfortable fight at that point. So I managed to win that. And then final was Peter Edwards. Of course, I know Peter Edwards.
Who now is the president of WAKO GB, yeah.
Of course.
And also multiple world champion.
Yeah.
Great fighter back in the day.
Legend.
Yeah.
Like one of the originals. Absolute great fighter. And again, someone I watched as a kid. So again, no expectations, no pressure. And I won. So I've just beat like 3 of the names. And
by the way, Jason stitched you right up for your first event. He could have gave you a little bit of an easier one first, couldn't he? Do you know what I mean? But everyone's a world champion in every fight. That's what it was like, though, wasn't it?
But at that point of time, that's how it was.
Yeah.
And you'd just fight these people day in, day out, and it'd just be incredible. So at that stage, I was like, okay, I might be all right at this. Yeah. I could probably do something. But I think I went on a bit of a winning spree, like doing the Simax and the WAKO British and things like that. But I went abroad a couple of times, but I didn't really do the Worlds or anything like that.
But you're definitely dusting the cobwebs off, though, and getting some scalps. Yeah,
for sure. And then in 2003, you went to Paris.
What was your training like at that point then? Was you taking it seriously? Because I know that you are a genetic freak as well. Do you know what I mean? Don't be wrong. You also train really hard. And I know actually we used to do some horrendous training sessions.
We've had some great sessions.
Some really, really good training sessions. But as well, you are like your body as well. I mean, you're in great physical shape now, but with the peak of when you were fighting also was almost, I'm obviously not gay, but you had the best physical physique a man could probably have.
You hate saying this, don't you?
Yeah.
Mr. Competitive bastard.
No, but do you know what? It kept me in check. It kept me in shape. I might not have
been. But it did both of us.
I might not have been to the same degree as you, but it kept me in the best physical shape I could have been for my genetic shape and everything. But you really were. So do you think that impacted your physical abilities as well, obviously? Because you're like, just to put it into perspective for other people as well, like I've seen you slam dunk and jump up and grab hold of a basketball hoop, and you're 5'10".
You're cheeky for 6 feet.
5'10", 6 foot. Yeah, same thing. No, you're not. Yeah, so you're 6 foot. So which is.
I've always been athletic.
But that is something that someone that's 6'3" you might not be able to do. You have to have a certain amount of fast twitching muscle fibers and a spring. So as well as your physique isn't for show. Like that's showing.
No,
that's showing off.
It's functional.
That's showing off that what your body is actually capable of as well, isn't it?
So I think at that point I was training heavily, but I've always trained. So it's strange when you always train, isn't it? Because what you see as normal, is like, wow, you're doing that like to a regular person. That's insane. Why are you training that? That's insane training. No one can do that. But for people who compete or people who are heavy into training, it's just it's a normal thing. So yeah, I was training. I can't really think exactly, I wasn't that accurate with my training. I was going out to kickboxing classes, I was doing sparring, always hitting the gym.
Training most days then.
So I was doing every day, pretty much.
But compared to what you do like because some of the stuff we used to do pre-World Championships, once we got going and right into it, was
you used to be up
at 5 a.m. and training 2-3 times a day. So it wasn't that level at them, but it was just still a lot, like a fight, training.
But I was in my early 20s, so I didn't have to take it so seriously.
Don't realise how fit you are, do you, when you're that age?
No, not at all.
You totally take it for granted, you really do.
Yeah. So I was training consistently, but I had a really good spell of winning things, and then managed to win I think the must have been the WAKO British. It must have been I think I won it 2001, 2002, and then it must have been 2003, whenever it was. But I qualified to go to the Paris, to the World Championships. And again, went zero pressure. I don't think I trained consciously any different to what I normally would. For that, I just went, again, no expectations. So
was it 3-2s each round still then? Yeah. Was it still then as well? Because that's what it is now.
Yeah, it
changed it not long before that, or in a round, to make every fight was a 3-2 minute round.
Yeah, it was definitely. So I was fit enough.
Which is quite, if you think about that, it's quite hard work when you do maybe 2 in the prelims a day.
Yeah.
At least 1.
Yeah.
And then that's every day though, isn't it?
Over the course of 4 or 5 days, isn't it?
And then you're obviously getting better and better quality fighters, and you're getting more injured and more physically fatigued.
So you're waking up the next day and you're aching, or you're still like sore from something that you've done.
You're not the best version of yourself for the finals. The finals weren't always the best fights, were they? Did you notice that?
No, I know.
And that's really mad, because people were at that stage, quite close in their abilities, and also really fatigued, and a lot of injuries coming. But the prelims, sometimes you'd get the better fights, wouldn't you?
And the look of the draw. Sometimes you get like the best fighter the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, it did change. They started seeding things a little bit later
that's
on,
good
didn't
as well.
They?
Yeah.
But everyone's the best from their country at the World Championships.
There is no easy fight.
You don't get an easy fight, not at all. Just doesn't happen. So then I happened to go through to the final. I can remember you being there. You weren't on the team, but you went to watch, didn't you?
Yeah, me and Paul Busby went over.
Right.
Yeah. So,
some stories there. So I mean, I was literally breezing through, honestly speaking, to the final.
You didn't look in any type of bother at any.
No,
was you winning? Didn't you 10-zip a lot of people?
Every round until the final.
Yeah.
But then the final, I had Reggie Perry, who was an American guy from the famous John Paul Mitchell team.
He was a ringer who wins everything all the time.
Yeah.
Never going to beat this guy. Let's see how, well Drew's going to get on.
So I can remember when I first got there, because I was new to the World Championships, it was my first one, I didn't know anybody. But there were two people that I was concerned about, because being a kid, you always hear about the American team, the John Paul Mitchell team. It's the famous team. They are the elite, the best of the best.
So good.
So Reggie Perry was there and Jardy Tension.
Oh, another one as well. Another ringer.
Yeah. So, and I can remember they had their bomber jackets on and they got the Paul Mitchell, although it was a US jacket.
They were zipping everyone.
They got their own John Paul Mitchell branded on the sleeves.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can remember seeing them thinking, okay, they're going to be good. There's no two ways about it. So when Reggie was doing his early rounds, I was watching, I was like, oh, he is actually very good. That's going to be, it's probably going to be me and him in the final.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was. And it was such a close final.
Yeah. I remember being flipping on the edge of my seat all the way through
my life literally it did change. It could have gone in one direction or the other down to the last second.
Do you think that was a sliding doors moment then?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100%. The day before, I can remember Brian Beck approaching me and saying, look, we've got a guy who wants to sponsor someone from the UK team. His name's Peter Kruckenhauer.
Yeah.
He's from Top 10.
Ta-da.
Exactly.
Yeah, Peter, look, I've got your top on that you gave us.
So just to add a little bit more pressure, and he said, I've given your name because you're the only one. I think Mika Hink actually won.
Yeah,
the female fighter the same year, but everyone else, I can remember.
So, as you talked about this before the final had gone on as well?
It was the day before.
Yeah.
So he said, you're the only male fighter in the final.
What, from the UK
From
team?
the UK on that occasion. He said, so I've given him your name, and he's pretty much said, if he impresses and wins, then we'll give him some kind of sponsorship deal or whatever. Thanks, Brian. That's great pressure. And then he'd introduce me to Peter. So I'm like, oh, well, just before, extra stuff.
Afterwards.
Oh, God, you know what I mean? So anyway, that fight, it was back and forth. Reggie was incredible. I can remember him kicking me, winding me. And I was like, oh, it was a really good fight.
It was 1-for-1, wasn't it? For
literally.
A lot of it? Yeah.
And then the third round, we were just level. And it was literally the last 2 seconds. I can remember it clearly, just fighting, and I can hear Jason Charlesworth saying, hold, don't attack, don't have, let's get extra time. Yeah. I don't listen to coaches, and I'm probably the worst person to coach, because the only coach, and you stood behind me a bunch of times, and you're there as moral support for me.
I wouldn't tell you
I just want you there as the backup, and it's good to have. But the only coach I ever really listened to was Vince, honestly speaking. So with someone telling me to do something, I know what I can do or what I should do. And luckily I attacked him and literally leant in.
The last second this was like a movie or something.
No, you couldn't write it. Leant in with my right hand and hit him in the body. And all the rest went up like this. And I can remember turning it and Jason Charles was jumping up and down like this. And Peter Edwards is there and he's talking to me.
Just give me goosebumps. Because I remember that, and we all jumped up, because you're the only guy from the GB in the finals anyway, and you literally nipped it in the very, very last seconds.
I know.
He's fucking won it. He's won the worlds.
It was.
Do you know what I mean? Straight in on his first time on the WAKO GB team, beating beating in a very, very close final to really prove yourself as well, because you were zipping. You hit someone with your.
I did a tornado kick.
Your
blitz,
trademark
step through in a spin. I know.
I used to teach that.
I was that close to being disqualified.
I taught that in seminars as well. I taught that as well in seminars or different adapted versions. It's so good with your blitz.
Yeah.
Step through and then.
Because the blitz falls short, doesn't it?
Yeah,
sometimes. And I was that close to being disqualified, because I'd actually, with him, I can remember I'd actually scored with the punches. Yeah, but you know what it's like when you start a flow of a technique.
It's going.
It just goes.
Yeah.
So I just carried on, and I've seen it on the video, and the ref definitely said stop at the point. And then shortly after, the kick comes through, and he was clean out. I'd knocked him out. But the the stars were shining down on me, and they didn't disqualify me. I mean, they got me through. So when you say a sliding door moment, those 2 seconds of beating Reggie Perry with that lead last second point, it definitely was, because from that, then I got sponsored by Peter.
And also,
my name was recognised.
Oh, in an instant. But hats off to Jason Charlesworth, because he instigated a sponsorship, not just for yourself.
No, for a team.
But for a whole team at that point. So credit where credit's due. And Jason is very good at getting deals together.
Sure is.
Do you know what I mean? And he's very pushy by nature, but that serves him for something like that. And Peter obviously saw how well you were, and then that started the
top 10
UK team, which is when, from that point, if you just want to carry on about how that all kind of formulated and stuff as well.
Yeah, so from that, obviously you and I have been close friends since then. So it just so happened that we'd got like a group of friends who trained together, like from Del Sampson's club, from Jason Charles. We're all very close, weren't we?
Del and Jason were used to network a lot and go away together. And then Jason had his guys and you, and then Del had his. He was like Sam Timmis. Yeah. I think at the time as well, who else? Big Cherry. Jamie Wood was so underrated.
Lorraine Hughes.
So good he was. And not that many people internationally outside the WAKO would have known.
Which is crazy, isn't it?
Who he was. And he would have literally taken them all out. He was so good. Quite simple with what he did, but very, very effective.
Yeah.
And
David Hughes, Paul Busby. There's two.
Lorraine Hughes, some Paul Busby.
Great people
there's
together.
Ones, there was Tina as well. There was Julie Charlesworth.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss anyone out if I have.
We'll bring them. But that team, it was the nucleus of the really early doors, and we did really well, didn't we?
I was a reserve at that stage, but I was happy to have been associated. You were formulated, already formed. I was just out of the army, so I hadn't really done any competing for I'd been in the army 7, nearly 8 years, and I started to do a little bit a couple of years before. So I'd done a lot of full contact. So I was kind of like integrating into points and having my own journey as well then, but obviously taking it up quite quickly and getting on quite well. But you were definitely a mentor within it, whether it was intentional or not. And I talk about this a lot. It's about, you're the mean average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Totally.
And the people we associated ourselves with were only people of value where we were getting something from.
Yeah.
So, and that was unconscious. I don't think we did it on
you don't do it intentionally.
No, but
it just happened at that time.
That's why you become successful, because we would knock around it. And the like attracts like, so people would want to come and train with us, and they would be of good caliber. So we were just constantly around some, some really good high caliber people. And when we'd go abroad, all the people you meet are the top echelon of the people from all the other countries.
That's right.
So you kind of, this mindset that you develop is very much, seems normal, really, doesn't it? It's not normal at all.
Not at all.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the mindset and your approach as well to stuff? Because for me, when I used to watch it, it was just it didn't seem like you were doing anything special to yourself, but it was so normalized to you what you were doing.
So this is the thing when it comes to like training and things, because I was so consistent, so disciplined, which I got from my father. Just as a kid, you're not disciplined, are you? So you need someone, a firm hand, to make you go and train and do all that sort of stuff. But because he'd done that, it just made it so normal for me to just put the work in all the time. It was like brushing my teeth every day if I hadn't trained or if I hadn't sparred or I hadn't done something. It felt weird. And it's still like that now to this day. So I just trained and didn't think anything of it. Loved going to do sparring sessions. I didn't train. I mean, I was a personal trainer at 18, so I knew what I should be doing. It wasn't like I was just getting lucky, because I knew how to train. But I just did it consistently. And if you do things consistently, you might get a few things wrong, but more often than not, you're doing the right thing. You're going in the right direction.
Don't you? A lot of the learning that we did back then, though, was through figuring it. That was a whole.
No, it was on the mat.
It was a lot of. It's different now, though. You've seen how technical.
Of course it is.
And I think definitely that back then. I'm not saying everyone, because there were some schools and some people that were very technical, but it's definitely the way in the people that I was associating with. There were great people. We were around them all the time, but you just spar and figure it out and get hit with stuff, and then stop getting hit and copy what they did, and then work it out on the mats and watch other fighters. And it was literally just a fail and learn process, wasn't it? And then what we did, because we were teaching, is we were starting to break what we learnt down and then deliver that in a different way. And then we had, remember the top 10 junior team that we started together, and they went on to win every major international event. And that was an really exciting time then, because we were fighting. We'd bring these guys with us as well who were so keen.
Yeah.
And they were like little flipping animals that we just absolutely thrashed the living daylights out of them, and they loved it and were begging for more. Make them do what we did, go where we went, and what we were doing to them is modelling
what
success.
we had done, but with a little more structure.
Yeah,
I think what actually happened with, like, when I was fighting for sure, I would learn on the mat and I would get it, but I internalized it and I just kind of figured it out for myself. And it wasn't until you and I started teaching alongside with you. I was teaching at one of your schools, and we'd go and travel, and we'd start talking, and I'd start like actually vocalizing what I was always learning. And then you'd give me some ideas, I'd give you some ideas, and we'd just start structuring things and working out the science of fighting.
Yeah.
And how to win a fight, and I became
breaking it down
so analytical, not just for myself, but I became a really bloody good coach.
Yeah.
Because I could work out what was happening in a fight, what his attributes were, what their attributes were, and how he could break them down.
The puzzle.
And it was literally like that. And I loved that. That was, I loved fighting, of course, but I also loved just sitting back and watching what's going on, because it's a game of chess. It's intelligence. It's violent chess, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's great to see a fight, but there's so many intricate details going on, and to break that down is just amazing. So I used to love just sitting back and watching and coaching. And it wasn't until I perhaps started teaching that. I'd always learned it, but it wasn't until I started teaching I actually really started learning about the sport itself.
You learn so much by teaching, don't you?
Of course.
I remember some of your seminars you started putting together as well.
Yeah.
Because there weren't, I mean, there were, but I remember with Peter Kuchenhauser, and for top 10, you'd go around the world. And a lot of times when we were fighting, you'd be delivering seminars beforehand, or we'd go to summer camps and you'd teach, and they were brilliant. And all of it was literally stuff that you could just take away with you and implement, like set combinations, set drills, and analysis that you could put in, rather than just like, here you go, get thrashed in a warm-up and hit the pads.
Which was what a lot of people did at that point.
Which is what you'd get at a seminar a lot of the times, wasn't it?
So I can remember when, obviously, I got the sponsorship with Peter, and he would invite us when we need to go to Austria, and I did quite a few seminars, and I can remember going, and like I was I felt like I wasn't confident. I was like, what can I show? These are all world-class fighters.
You don't realise what you know, though, do you?
And then I felt like a bit of a fraud. I was a bit, but the more that I taught, and feedback, I was thinking, actually, I do know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I can teach these people things. The sport is so diverse that they might be great at that, but I'm great at what I do, so I can actually add value to your learning capacity. I can actually give something. But it was really hard. Every time I started a seminar, I can remember going in and thinking, I've got my template of what I teach. If I stuck to that template, it would have been valuable. But what I ended up doing was I'd end up going and a little bit off course and just looking at what was going on.
What was needed.
And then I got into a flow.
Yeah.
And when it's not a greater feeling than when you're flowing and you're talking and everything's vibing and it's going great. It's like, where am I? Like, I'm downloading data and giving it out. I don't know where this is coming from, but it's amazing.
Learn, isn't it? It's almost as if when you do get into that flow state, and you can get it when you're talking, when you're teaching, when you're fighting as well, can't you? You just know what to do, correct actions, correct words come. And when you're speaking like you do, it's almost like you're downloading it, you're teaching yourself, or you're becoming conscious as you communicate, because you've broken it down in that much detail that you're going, oh yeah.
As it's coming out, you're literally like, God, that's really right.
We don't tell them that. No, that's definitely why that happens.
I've known this for years.
I didn't just learn that from watching you and breaking that down. But
that's a skill, is to be able to analyze something and break it down and work out the solution. And as a coach, I think it's an attribute that good coaches have got to have.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so important. But yeah, so I love the coaching. That was great. That was more and a little less pressure to fight. I can remember towards like the end of so. In the early, like after 2003, I'd have a good few years of winning everything and feeling good.
I was with you, mate, and you beat loads of the best people in the world. I know better than anyone who you beat. I mean, we used to go away, and not that many people were travelling to where we went. We were sometimes me and you would be the only ones from the UK there, but we went away at every event you could possibly go before, and all the major ones in the UK, obviously, that are in line with what we're doing with WAKOs and the Simacs, and then and all the bigger ones. And then we went away all the time. We must have been going away once a month.
We were traveling all the time.
Sometimes it was twice a month,
of course,
and would go with the team. Sometimes we go with the juniors. Sometimes we go just ourselves. And I've seen who you actually beat, and people wouldn't know. Because there wasn't really social media as much then, was it? Was it as much then?
No,
it wasn't really,
was it?
Not to the same degree. So it wasn't really getting shared as much. I would see who you just scalped from all the different countries, and then come back and it not really being seen
not a big deal.
Understood by everybody. But I've been by you, and I've seen all the people that you beat, and I know. And in my opinion, you were absolutely one of the best of that generation.
Well, thank you.
No, you 100% are, and I'll argue that with anyone, because I know people assuming it just off what they know about you, but they've seen 20% of what you've done. I've seen the other 80% of what you've done. And I've seen those moments, those sliding door moment that you had. I've seen that happen with loads of good fighters consistently, and you always seem to manage to come on top. And the only person I've seen that is like Elijah as well, was managing to do that as well, where he's neck and neck, and he's not gonna fold from the pressure. You'd stay composed, and it's definitely your composure that would do it. And I think all that together collectively, and the whole image, let's be honest, because that collectively upped your profile even more, because your looks, your physique, your image, because your clothes, and the way you portrayed yourself.
It's a strange thing, isn't
like
it?
A superstar, and you were treated, and people wouldn't see this if they weren't away. Drew, like people would be there, wanting your autograph and wanting to associate with you in such a lovely way. And you deserved it as well. I think now, if you'd had the level that you were at then, if you was that now, there's so many opportunities available for that level of martial artist now.
Yeah,
where you could literally have fought, and you've got things like the karate combat, you've got SFX that we're starting. And you've got loads of other, other things. And look at some of the stuff Elijah's doing, where he's getting to travel now. He just came out from China.
I know, I saw that. It's amazing,
unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? And so there's more opportunities available. We had to just teach, didn't we, to make money from martial arts?
I wouldn't change it though. I'm happy with everything that I achieved while I was at that time, and the opportunities that I got. I feel like I merited, and I feel like they're absolutely enough for me, because what they've led to now. Without jumping too far forward, it's perfect. Everything's been very organic, and I think honestly, like when I was in that spell of being very successful, winning, it was great, but I knew it was time to finish. It was strange. I've had so many conversations with you about this, and I can remember being one clearly, but we spoke about it a lot. But we were in Italy before we were about to fight, and we were both just sat there and we're like, why the fucking hell are we doing this?
We're shitting ourselves up. We both verbalised it to each other.
The best fighters there, ready. We're like, what the fuck are we, like, this is horrible. Why are we putting ourselves through this now? We don't need to. And I definitely had a change of, there's a huge difference between like fighting to win, which is what I was doing, to fighting not to lose, which is what I transitioned to.
Sustain the reputation.
And every time I fought, it was like, someone's after me. They want to take this all away from me. They want to beat me. And it's great having that experience and perhaps that name, because you can beat a lot of people just off the name, and the referees tend to look perhaps a little bit more at your actions and points, so you get a bit of a rub sometimes. But for me, like, instead of I'll fight anybody, like as I was and I'll give it everything, I was going towards, oh God, I've got to fight him now. If I don't beat him, everyone's going to think that he's better than me, and he's going to, and it changed, and it was horrible.
Also, which we forgot to mention, is your knee.
Oh yeah,
because that. So
happened. That was a huge change,
and then your whole fighting style changed after that. Yeah,
So in 2003, if you watch me then, I was a kicker.
Yeah,
which is insane, because I definitely wasn't a kicker towards the end of my career. So in like 2004, 2005, it was. I tore my ACL, and it was a good 2 years really before I'd had to get the operation. I had to go through obviously all the rehab and stuff. And I quickly found that when I come back, I don't know if it was lack of confidence or lack of just kicking that just made me change my style. And I become honestly speaking, I became a fighter I didn't really enjoy. That was probably the turning point. I used to watch myself fight and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a boring fighter. And I hated it. I couldn't express myself the same way as what I did before. I still won, but I won because I became analytical, how to break people down. And I can imagine I was horrible to fight because I got a bit of a different style to most people.
You were totally
and whereas people
Yeah.
said to me, they'd watch me fight and I'd be like, oh, I can beat Drew. It's very basic what he does. But then they'd say after, I don't know how you managed to slow me down, or you controlled the distance or the timing. I don't know how you managed to do it. And honestly, like that was, I learned it as I was doing it, but I definitely changed the way I was fighting.
Yeah.
Not into a way that I enjoyed fighting, but I had to win.
You still look good, mate. You were still great and effective. It was still very effective. But it was quite, like I said, yeah, you changed, your style changed because
massively.
You were doing all sorts of spin kicks and from wild. I know some top level fighters that got hit with them from all sorts of angles with the spin kicks off you. I'm not going to mention their names, but I'm sure they'll remember and know who they were. But yeah,
but that did change the way I fought. But I'm also very grateful for it because I wasn't able to use those tools anymore. It helped
simplified your game.
Helped me to simplify it, absolutely. Yeah. But it helped me learn how to coach and to change things as well. Also, it stopped me from kicking, so it saved my hips, which you know about. How many people are having hip operations?
Yeah, well, I've just had one, haven't I?
Exactly, that's what I was saying. So because, touch wood, great Nick.
Yeah.
Because I didn't abuse my hips with all the kicks. And I think if I'd have carried on doing that for another 10 years, I would have had the same problem.
Yeah.
For sure. So it definitely changed my style of fighting. And then, so what I was saying is that I not only did my style of fighting change, but my mentality did as well. And everything was fighting not to lose, which was, I was still on the outside being very successful, but I wasn't able to express myself the same way, which was okay. But if I remember the last world title I fought in Ireland, the last one I won, which was 2011, I trained like a beast for that.
Yeah.
I was 31.
I remember you were training.
So I can
2-3 times a day.
The best thing I did
5 a.m.
for 6 weeks. I trained 3 times. 6 a.m. was the first session,
training session,
middle afternoon session, and then an evening session. What I did, because I had my kickboxing school then, I opened it up to my students.
Yeah.
So at 6 a.m., can you imagine walking in? I was only doing a circuit class.
And you get some of the kids would turn up to train with you.
5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 47, 50-year-olds, a real mixed bag of people. To
come and train with Drew, preparing for the World Championships.
And it brought such a community to what I was doing. And obviously, I still did the lesson plan. I still planned it all. But to have those people support, like the energy in the room, it was amazing. And it took me through, and I thank them. Although they probably don't realize what they did for me, they kept me accountable because every morning I had to open the door. So I knew I had to be, I would have done it anyway, I think. But it just made it so much easier. So I trained like a beast. So when I got to Ireland, again, I was fighting, honestly, not to lose.
Did you know that was going to be your last one beforehand?
Yeah. I wanted to win 3 world titles.
Yeah.
So I pictured in my head that I was going to win and there was going to be no other way.
Yeah.
So I really, did all the visualization that I always do. And I just planned to win and I didn't see me losing. And as the rounds went on, I was fighting some great fighters and I was managing to get through, got to the final with Alex Glexner from Germany. And let's be honest, Alex Glexner is an athlete. I think he was 21 at the time.
Yeah, so 10 years younger than when he was so quick and athletic as well.
So fast. Yeah. There's no way in the world I should have beat him. I could look at him and I don't see how I beat him. Well, I know how I beat him, but like 31 isn't old, but I felt it. But compared to him, he was faster, he's more technical. But I wore him down, beat him up a little bit.
26 years of experience as well, remember?
And that's all it was. And again, I was behind the whole fight, like 4 or 5 points down by the second round. And I can remember, I just presumed that I was going to win, so I wasn't worried, which is weird. But I sensed the coaches like getting a little anxious, and I sensed the crowd. Like a couple of people had come over from the UK to Ireland, and I can just sense that they were a little anxious. I could like make out that it was happening, but in my head, I don't know. I wasn't worried.
No.
And then there was a point of the fight where I got level and the crowd, I could sense, had turned back.
Well, that's where you're most comfortable in those moments
and
as
that
well.
was it then. And then I knew. And then I can remember getting one. I think I got one, maybe 2 points ahead. And I knew there was no way he was going to get me from that.
Do you think he would have panicked when it was getting closer and closer and lost mentally?
100%.
And you could keep that calmness.
I know that I beat him up a little bit. I'd hit a little harder on a few shots, maybe a little bit after.
Yeah.
You play with the rules a little bit. And I knew that I'd broken him and he couldn't attack me because I'm better when people are attacking me. So the timing's better. So as soon as I get ahead, I'm just going to wait for you. Yeah. And the second that you come, no matter how fast you are, I'll counter you because that was my strength. And not only was it my strength, he knew that was my strength.
He was fighting a name as well. He was fighting because he looked up to you as well, as they all did for years.
So the year before, I taught in Austria for the summer camp, and he was there. And I don't think he'd done it intentionally, but he was saying, I'm fighting in the division above. So I was helping him. I was trying to teach him, trying to help him improve his game and all this. And then when obviously the championships come round, I don't know if he was lying to me then. He was trying to be a bit smart, but he was actually in my division. So I was like, okay, so not that it bothered me, but at that point, that was it was a little cheeky. Yeah. But I managed to win. And then as soon as I won, oh my God, like the relief, it was like, that's it.
I'm done now.
I'm done. And then after that, there was one more tournament, was there? And it was the Kumite.
That's right.
And that was my last one.
Yeah.
And it was the most ridiculous last tournament to do. It's something that I would never put anyone through. I fought in my hometown.
Yeah.
I got
unbelievable amount of pressure to put yourself under for no reason.
It was stupid and I hate doing that. Yeah. Got my friends all ticket, got everyone there, my family, everyone. And again, I was at a point where I'd visualized it and I was like, I'm not going to lose, so it's okay. Yeah. I'd said to myself at this point, I was that confident. I knew how fit I was. And thank God I didn't. But again, I could have done it. It was close in the final against Marcus Lewis, like an absolutely incredible fighter. And I don't want to just point him out. Every single fight I had was against an amazing fighter. Yeah. Sam Timmis, Chris Aston, who was coming through, becoming very good at that point.
He was becoming a bit of a pain in the ass when he Chris at the one stage.
I'm not going to remember his name, and this is really going to upset me. He's from Liverpool, used to fight. I'm really sorry, I can't remember his name. But he was my first fight, lightweight fighter, super fit. I went in to fight him thinking that this isn't going to bother me. And he was amazing. He really put it on me, and it just woke me up. And I thought, okay. And then the pressure.
Ian Hollett was.
Yes, thank you. Ian Hollett. Thank you.
He's
sorry.
He's an unbelievable fighter. He is.
And I can remember Alvin Lewis, like after the fight, and he came up to me and he went, "That was a bit harder than you expected, wasn't it?"
Yeah, what about your son?
He didn't say it he didn't say it like that. I think he put it a bit differently in Alfie's way. But it was real. And all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh my God, all my friends are here. This is pressure.
And that was close in the finals with Marcus as well.
Because, every fight was
I remember horrible. He hit you and you he hit you at one stage in the fight, you turned around, you were like that, and I was like, stand up straight, Drew. You went, fucking.
So in my all the times I've fought, I've been like knocked 3 times. That was obviously clearly one of them. I can remember turning around.
Drew, don't get knocked out in your hometown, everyone's here.
Pads come undone, Lee. Mate, and I was spinning. And after that, the whole fight then was not a blur, but it was just intent. Yeah. Then I had to fight. It was very, very, very hard.
I think you knew then as well. Was he like seeking blood at that stage?
Of course. And that's the way he fought, of course. Yeah. So I kind of expected it, but that made it very real very quickly. Like, wow, okay, this is on.
Yeah.
So, and then luckily it went my way. And that was, you couldn't sign off any better. I couldn't sign off any better. That was almost a movie moment. It was a great way to finish. And that was the end of my fighting career.
I know. And
I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Brilliant, mate. What amazing career. You couldn't write a film about it. You really could. It's a proper like Rocky film.
Yeah.
Moments that you lived through and I lived through with you on a lot of them. But so from there, and then you were tried. Was you at all? Because like to make the decision to retire from fighting was a really big decision for me, and I was worried about who I was going to be, what my self-image was, because I went from being a paratrooper and having this image, and then I was straight into a fighter, and I'd always done fighting anyway, so I had this kind of alpha strong image, and then like, who am I after this point? But once I did give up, to decide to give up was hard. But once I did give up, it was such a relief.
Absolutely.
I was like, oh my God, why did I do this for so long? Did you get that? Did you feel that at all?
Yeah. So the decision to retire actually was quite easy because I knew that was going to be my fight and I knew I'd finish. But the same apprehensions, what am I going to become after this? So I threw myself into coaching, obviously, and my school and coaching on the GB team and living almost vicariously through students and people that I was working for a period of time was enough for me.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved being and seeing successes from other people. That it was really powerful, and it was almost as good as the feeling I was getting when I was winning. It was not quite the same, but it was enough.
It was nice to keep you going after that feeling's no longer achievable by yourself because you've stopped.
Yeah.
Then it's another way of getting that dopamine kind of
Absolutely.
hit, really, isn't it? But then as well, was it enough? Because I know, like, is it enough financially? Because you knew you wanted bigger things in life and you always had done, and you weren't going to be complacent with being a personal trainer just in your hometown of Kiddie. So do you want to talk about what kind of happened from then? And
so
where you are?
I mean, I loved doing all of that. But then I was like, everything was going great. I had a good school, teaching good people becoming world champion. Everything was great. But then I kept getting strange offers. But again, it's who you network with. And if you remember Nick Orton, we both networked with a lot.
Of course.
Great guy. And he kept having links for, do you want to go to India to train a Bollywood actor for his movie? I mean, it was the first time I heard about it and the name was thrown at me. I didn't have a clue who the person was.
You don't know the Bollywood, but over there, they're like, is it true that they're like more famous over there in comparison to a Hollywood actor in Europe?
Yeah, massively. Because of the population and because of the culture of Bollywood movies, the fan, they are literally fanatical. It's crazy. It's obscene. But we don't see that.
Yeah.
So I literally said no to a couple of people because I didn't make any sense to me. That now I'm there, I'm like, I probably should have said yes to that person.
What would they be the equivalent of in America? The level of kind of fame and the
any of the big Hollywood actors,
like
Leonardo DiCaprio, any of the big actors,
like the Indian version of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Exactly, they're on the same footing. But I can't even say they're it's not the same level. They're actually almost like in India. They are the biggest thing. They are. I don't want to say like gods because it's not like that. But they're so fanatical and so much praise and attention goes to them that it's just weird. It's very difficult for someone who isn't there to understand.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And it's really, I'm very, very privileged to be a part of it and to see it. But yeah, like I said, for a couple of times, I wasn't going to go. And then, you know how it is, like I kept getting asked. I'm like, why am I still being asked this? Like, is the world trying to tell me something? Am I being pulled to? So I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go.
Because they want you as well. Like,
I know, I mean, that's quite nice.
Deal, multiple world champion. Because the look as well. You got your 8-pack and your or 12-pack or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So
eventually I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I went for 3 months. But what
was it like? What was your initial thoughts when you went there?
Opportunity.
Yeah, could you see it?
Honestly speaking, it was so apparent to me that at that time I was obviously had a lot that I could give, and I had a lot of value that I could give.
Could you feel that I can really make a difference here? Like,
I mean, not necessarily the knowledge, but the understanding. But it's definitely a little behind. It's catching up massively, and I've seen a massive learning curve for them over the last few years. But it was definitely behind, and I could see that I could add a lot of value to that. So, and also then, like financially and obviously for a business, I could see a lot of opportunity for that as well. So very quickly, I almost decided, okay, I'm going to stick it out here. And I'm actually going to see where I can take this. And
where did you take it? Do you want to say, just for people listening, like how long have you've lived there now, obviously, don't you? How long have you lived there?
I've lived there for 10 years.
And you've married a supermodel, an Indian supermodel.
Yeah, so my wife...
You were going to all of the big red carpet stuff, at the GQ. Is that right?
Yeah.
Equivalent of
It's very strange. So my wife, who I met after a year of being there, is she's super successful in her own right and is very famous for in her own right at doing what she does. But it's very elaborate. And you know what it's like when you start moving in certain circles, and I guess for being good at what I do, people talk about you. So it's very elaborate. You'll go into
more so over there as well. Would you say?
Yeah.
Is it very much like?
I mean, I'm in Mumbai, so
yeah,
you know, it's not the capital, but it's a huge city. It's the capital of Bollywood for sure. So all the events that you go to, if you're like being seen there, then they're like, who's the white guy? You know, who's married to Candice? What's he do?
Is it true that you'd run down the beaches and you'd have loads of Indian kids running
so many
behind
strange
you,
stories,
calling your name, Drew?
Yeah,
Drew,
of course.
Let me see your abs, Drew.
What's really weird is like, because tattoos, it's a strange thing. So everyone wants to see my tattoos, and everyone wants to, like, when you wear a t-shirt, they can see that you're a little bit in shape.
Is it true? Quite a few men quite liked you over there as well.
I mean, which is a little bit unnerving, honestly. Like,
do you want to tell us any stories about that?
So, like you were saying, walking down the beach or walking anywhere, even walking through like security at the airport. The airports are like frisking you, and they're like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm a trainer." Yes, sir, I can tell. And it's a very
complimentary over there,
but it's not. It's very innocent. It's nothing like being like, that's quite a thing for like someone to do that to me. I'd be a little, that's a bit weird, but it's not. There's no harm. There's no malice. There's no intent.
It's just admiration, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's lovely. And this is what I realized is people are just so nice. And I think it's why I've stuck it out for 10 years and why I've managed to make it a second home is that I feel very comfortable there, and it's just such a wonderful place to be. The people are so amazing. I feel very fortunate. And yes, I'm working with incredible people who...
Do you want to name some of them? Are you allowed to or not?
Yeah, no, I can. I hate name dropping, but
no,
when I
first
went, I went to train Harshvardhan Kapoor, who is Anil Kapoor's son. Now, people in... the UK, they would know Anil Kapoor from Slumdog Millionaire. He was the Chris Tarrant version. He was the person who was doing the Question Master. So Anil Kapoor is like hugely successful, hugely famous in India for being like an amazing actor, and his longevity of acting is just, it's decades. So, but he's like one of the, I mean, it's happening more and more, but one of the few people who have actually crossed over into Hollywood, I guess, who's had some success in Hollywood. So I went to train his son initially. And then on the back of that, over the course of the 10 years, there's not many people that I haven't had some kind of work with. So to name drop a few people that I'm training right now, I'm training Farhan Akhtar, who I actually trained for a boxing movie, which was right up my street. Brilliant. So although I'm a kickboxer, I'm a personal trainer really. So I train people to get in shape, but it's amazing how many people want to learn how to box and fight because it's, you know, it's so fun. They never ever want to fight anybody, but to learn how to punch and kick it's a great way of keeping fit and is really interesting. So a lot of the actors, they might not have roles where they're going to actually fight, but they just like to do it as well. So so Farhan Akhtar I'm training right now, Arjun Kapoor. I don't want to miss names, but I'll name a few. I'm training Hrithik Roshan. I'm teaching him how to fight at the moment. I've worked with Salman Khan. There's a lot, and I'm very lucky to work with these people because people in India, they would literally give their right arm to be able to work with these people because they're just wonderful people and very successful and admired and adored by so many people.
And do you think that interacting with them has obviously opened up more doors to
Of course
other
it does.
people?
I mean, this has been really lucky. So I train one person and then straight away that network, then they start talking about who trained you for that movie? Oh, is he good? Happily, yes, they're always quite favourable. Oh, I'll use him. And I'll constantly get asked. And I've got quite a long waiting list of people who have asked me to train them. And I hate saying no. And this is the difficult part.
You
with
like
my
that
business.
anyway, aren't you? You don't like to say no to people as a person anyway,
no,
do you?
But it's just so hard saying no to anybody. But I don't like saying no because I know there's an opportunity to explore. So I try not to say no. And I mean, sometimes I just haven't physically got the time. And I do run myself a little bit ragged. And this is something that I perhaps should pay attention to. But it's... I'll say yes whenever I can, but I have a waiting list. And some people that ask me and I haven't been able to train straight away, I have to say to somebody else, I can get someone else to work with you. Can I suggest someone? And they're okay with that. And then I get the person, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's like incredible. Like they would literally give their right arm to do it. So in that incident, then I'm happy because my network is helping other people is also getting them to places they want to be as well.
That's great. And that always helps. Reciprocity.
Of course it does, absolutely.
You're helping people out constantly, then hopefully one day people will help you back as well, won't they?
That's hopefully the way it works. But it's such a wonderful place to be, and there's so much opportunity. I mean, I've brought people from the UK to train people there as well. I've done it on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, it's you either love it or you don't. You know, you can either cope with the Indian way of life and how Mumbai is as a city, because it's literally an assault on the senses. It's so manic and like there's everything going on. I love it. Not everyone can deal with that, and they'll go back to, you know, their normal jobs, whatever they're doing in the UK, and that's fine. But they've had an experience and they've had a moment in time where they can say to someone, "I've trained an actor for a movie," and things like that, which is wonderful for them.
Great for the CV.
Of course it is, absolutely.
So before we finish off, then, Drew, what's the plan moving forwards now? Then what's Drew Neal going to be doing in the future? Are you staying in Mumbai? Are you going to move on? I know you're married. Is the plan to get a family, or is it what's the?
So the plan for me now is just to do as much as I can right now. I can't be a personal trainer for the rest of my life.
No.
I've got another decade of it for sure, and I'll probably try and stretch that a little bit further. But I will try and impact as many people as I can, you know, working with people in the movies and things like that. I've just bought a place with my wife, so we've now got a home set up there. I don't know if we're going to be in India for the rest of their life. I'm a little bit open to be wherever I can be, as long as I'm happy and got my health and I've got my wife and my family around me, it's good. But I think in India, I need to impact a few more people. So there will be an opportunity now to perhaps start having a few instructors and coaches underneath me.
That's a great idea, yeah.
So I'm going to start doing that and then sending them out and
your
helping
own company
them.
Where people will go for trainers.
That's it. So I'm part of I get asked to go and do seminars and everything in India. So I'm teaching a lot of trainers already. And that's great, and I feel like I'm affecting people, but I can do more and I can affect a bigger scale, and that will definitely be the way that I can go forward and just try and leave a bit of a stamp in India, like whether it's my style of training, but I'll leave my brand in India of, you know, trained by Drew in some aspect, and they'll be able to go and say, you know, I was trained by Drew Neal, so that will hopefully hold some weight where they go and, you know, put it on the CV and train some other people.
Brilliant, mate. That sounds really exciting. Thank you. I think we'll hold it there then, mate. That's been absolutely brilliant talking to you again, catching up with you.
I know.
We are in the great city of Liverpool, so I think we'd probably go out and have a little explore for a bit if you're up for that as well, mate.
Just like we used to, mate. Let's get right on it.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much for having me.